yoga. Now, during the last 40, 50 years, the word yoga has been bandied about a great deal. It has set on foot a great movement for the study and the practice of yoga, and I assume that most of you will have an idea of what is normally meant by yoga. Unfortunately, the physical aspects of yoga are considered rather more than the deeper aspects, but never mind. Now, yoga stands for a great field of understanding of life and the practical application of that understanding. But I want to go back to one of the earliest definitions. And I know that some of you know what I'm going to say, but never mind, I must repeat it for the sake of people not so familiar. About 600 BC, a little work appeared. I nearly said was published, but perhaps we can't speak of publication so far. It was written, probably on palm leaves, a little collection of important teachings about yoga. They were not new. They were gathered together. An existing teaching which was spread all over India and probably in other places too, in Tibet and in what we now call Sri Lanka, and further east there was a teaching. And this teaching was eventually gathered together around about 600 BC, and if I asked you, please put up your hand if you know its name, you would all tell me, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. It's a small book, a small work, divided into 4 parts, which we call books or chapters, and each chapter is divided into verses, rather like the Bible. Now, I'm going to refer only to 2 verses, which I regard as absolutely fundamental to the understanding of yoga. Verse 2 and verse 3, and if at home you have a copy of the Yoga Sutras, you can go back and study verse 2 and verse 3. Verse 2 says what yoga is. Now, in some of the translations, the words are rather long. I'll give you one of the long forms of it, but I will begin with the simplest form that anyone can understand. It's a definition or a way of explaining what yoga is all about. And I put it in these simple words. Yoga is making the mind quiet. Full stop. Just that. Yoga is making the mind quiet. Sounds simple until you try to do it. Now you try, perhaps when you're going to sleep, you think, try to put aside thoughts. And do they go away? Try every hour on the hour. Try to stop and say, now what was my mind doing before I remembered that it was on the hour? I had to look. And you will not find your mind in a state of rest. It is all the time thinking, either thinking about the past, something that's happened, thinking into the future, making plans, reminiscing, repeating mentally conversations that you have had. Do you find yourself doing this? If you're travelling in a bus or even when you're driving, as long as you keep your mind a bit on the road, you can do it in safety. What is your mind doing? You see something and you comment, you make a mental comment. Ah, that building, they are rebuilding that. Or look at that driver. Whatever it is, the mind is always making comment. And when you are just sitting at home not doing anything in particular, the mind tends to repeat things that have happened, to look into the future, to make plans, to write imaginary letters. How many imaginary letters? I've written a great many. They don't get written, but you plan what you're going to say. Have you had imaginary arguments when you disapprove of something that someone has done or said, and you're going to tell them next time you meet, and you build the conversation in advance? Always the mind is active, active, active. Yoga says, make the mind quiet. Yoga is the stilling of the mind. Now I'll give you the same thing in some of the long words that are used in some of the translations. Yoga is the suppression of the modifications, 5 syllables. 5 syllables. Yoga is the suppression of the modifications of the thinking principle. Now, if you like to use those long words, there's nothing to stop you.